Global infectious disease experts now confirm that a pandemic is unavoidable. How bad will it be? Also, China's reported coronavirus statistics are too low. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Martinson with your coronavirus update. It is about 6 o'clock on Sunday evening, so let's get right to it. Let's start with the numbers. Of course, I just told you that I think these numbers are way too low out of China. We'll get to that in just a minute, why we think that is. But as reported right now, I'm getting this from a beautiful place called Wu Live. Somebody has set up a really nice tracking website, so go ahead and record that for yourself and bookmark that because it's a great place to find everything all at once, and there's charts, graphs. It's a really nice presentation. China confirmed 16,615 confirmed cases. Interesting, recovered has now exceeded deaths. It's been a while since that happened, so but still that ratio is not super favorable. Elsewhere in the world, recovery seems to be the name of the game. We'll talk about that in just a second. We do have one death here of a Chinese man who was, I believe, 44 years old in the Philippines. So that is the first outside of China death. But otherwise, please note, this is now pretty much showing up all over the place, including some new cases in the United States. This just came out today. This is February 2nd here, and I guess that just came out pretty recently. This is in the New York Times, saying the Wuhan coronavirus spreading from China is now likely to become a pandemic that circles the globe, according to many of the world's leading infectious disease experts. Yep, that prospect is daunting. A pandemic, which is an ongoing epidemic on 2 or more continents, may well have global consequences, despite the extraordinary travel restrictions and quarantines now imposed by China, other countries, and finally, including the United States. We don't know a lot yet, so I think this article's fair. You know, we do not yet know how lethal the coronavirus is, but recently I've been really decrying the lack of on-the-ground video coming out of China. They've put really, really harsh quarantines on the news coming out of there. We finally got a couple of videos that snuck out at great risk and I think possibly great harm to the people who put them out, but real heroes for getting that stuff out. I will tell you that based on those videos that there's incredibly damaging things that have happened inside of China. So while there might be some uncertainty about how much damage, I think there can't be any uncertainty about the fact that there will be damage. Just how much is a different story. Okay, let's move on because in the United States, it feels to me like we're in the middle of a global, a really large campaign to push this one idea. And you've heard me talk about this before, and I think the journalists involved in this are reprehensible. That's caught me some flack. I had some articles written very negatively about me in Bloomberg, in Mother Jones, and that's going to pick up because I'm going to continue to lambaste the journalists who continue to push this really idiotic theme. And if you want to write some more bad articles about me, have at it. Coronavirus is scary, but the flu is deadlier, more widespread. This just came out yesterday. That's February 1st, USA Today, right? That is a really, I mean, you know the numbers because you've been following my work, but I'll cover it in just a second in case you're new here. That's an incredibly irresponsible thing to say. Full stop. Market Watch opinion, January 30th, so a couple days ago, 3 days now. For now, the flu is a bigger risk than coronavirus. Well, LA Times, just a couple days ago, for Americans, flu remains a bigger threat than coronavirus. What is going on here? In Axios, January 29th, talking about why we panic about coronavirus but not the flu, as if having reasonable concerns about a brand new, never before seen, zero herd immunity, highly infectious, very severe consequence, and possibly deadly virus, why you would have concerns about that, and immediately they go to the word panic, as if it's unreasonable, as if there's only 2 states, completely benignly ignorant or panicking. Obviously, there's a whole continuum in there, and you can be appropriately concerned about risks because we're adults, so we get to do that. Tri-County Sunday, just today, fears turn from flu to coronavirus, as if, oh yeah, I'm fearful of the flu, but let me just turn that same fear over here. People, this feels a lot like a really large campaign, and it's everywhere. Melissa Chan, she's got 64,000 followers, writing in the Atlantic, Time, Washington Post, So far, coronavirus is less lethal than the flu, which kills 10 to 25,000 Americans a year. Those are pretty high numbers. I'd like to see, I'll have to look into that. Yet airlines suspend routes. Countries bar people traveling from China. What are they responding to? What they are responding to, in part, is the lack of trust, transparency, and accountability in China's system. Well, sure, but I think I'll show you some data in a bit, and it's connecting a couple dots. We got to make some jumps, but I think there's a reason that governments have looked into and beyond having to trust whatever China says and have decided that halting and limiting travel from China would be a good idea. But again, it's worse than the flu. This is just, there's no argument about this. There's no room for discussion about this. Not at this late date, not yesterday, not 2 days ago. Again, just to beat this horse totally dead. The case fatality rate, flu, 0.1% or less. nCoV, 3%, maybe higher. We don't know at this point in time. We don't have good data yet. The R0, flu, 1.28. nCoV, 4? It's something big, but it's way higher than that one. We've covered that a lot. And of course, the thing that matters most, the serious complication rate, because once you get past a certain level, you swamp your hospital system, and that's a bad thing because then unnecessary deaths start to pile up because people can't be treated aggressively and appropriately. All right, moving on. Number of deaths for coronavirus likely far exceeds those released by Chinese regime. All sorts of sources are starting to come up. This is today kind of an article. It says here, the number of deaths greatly exceeds those released by the Chinese regime, according to sources who say, this is just one, the Hankou Funeral Crematorium is operating 24 hours a day and has a capacity of 30 cremation furnaces. So with the story saying there's still, 360 total deaths from the start of this whole thing, this just doesn't, just this one funeral crematorium operating 24 hours a day really says that statistic is grossly too low. It's a big, giant underreport. As a result, actual numbers could exceed official figures by 10 times, with no less than 200 deaths per day in Wuhan. I think that's a reasonable statistic, and they talk about how we could look at that. But I mentioned there was a video that came out, and by a really brave individual who, at the end of the video, you can see so-called health workers, 8 of them, banging down his door saying, we have to take your temperature, and he knows what's happening. He's about to be taken away somewhere. Before that, this got live streamed out, and he showed that this is the state of a Wuhan hospital where, forget about so overwhelmed that you're in a hospital, Gertie, in a hallway. A lot of these people are sitting in chairs, getting some IV treatments, suspended from the ceiling tiles. That's what happens when your hospital system gets overloaded. And in another part of this video, this just kind of looks like a hospitality bus. Doesn't look all that official, but he takes a peek inside and records that there are 8 body bags in this one, I don't know, what do you call that, a shuttle bus? And that these bodies were being brought out, and when the bus was full, off it would go, and another one would come. So this is kind of just a normal cycling process. Now, why, if this virus is no worse than the flu, how do we make sense of this? Now, again, big caveat, found this on the internet. I can't verify if it's absolutely true, but we're seeing a lot of stories like this, so it's starting to look true to me. But so just take it, this may or may not be right. But here's the story as it stands. A relative of mine from China just sent me this. Rows of police surrounds her residential block where a positive coronavirus case was found. It was someone who returned from Wuhan. Now their entire family has been taken away, and the whole block is now sealed off until the 16th of February. I believe that this is the kind of reactions that we are seeing. This means the Chinese government, the CCP, Communist Party, very, very afraid of this virus. They have the data. Of course, they're going to be afraid for probably good reasons. And I believe that the U.S. government has access to this kind of data as well. Of course they do. I want to turn to some science now. This is really important. I don't quite know what to make of it yet. This is in the New England Journal of Medicine, very respectable sort of a journal. And it talks about post-symptomatic infectivity. And that's maybe too strong of a word, but because there's virus in there, but there's the possibility. I'll put a question mark there. Post-symptomatic infectivity, little light yellow thing. Let's go there. All right, this concerns a story of a patient in Germany. A 33-year-old, otherwise healthy German businessman, patient 1, became ill with a sore throat, chills, myalgias on January 24th. We're going to note the dates here. This is important. The following day, a fever of 39.1 C, that's 102.4, developed, along with a productive cough. By the evening of the next day, so that would be the 25th, he started feeling better. Hey, good news, went back to work on January 27th. All right. Still continuing from the same article in the New England Journal of Medicine. So then the person he got it from informed her company about her illness, and then the contact tracing started, and they found this guy. And so they said, wow, you might have had contact. And he said, yeah, I had a little fever. So at presentation, though, when they looked at him, he was afebrile, meaning no fever and well. He reported no previous or chronic illness, had no history of foreign travel within 14 days. Okay, so good. So then they did 2 nasopharyngeal swabs, and 1 sputum sample were obtained and were found to be positive for the coronavirus. And here's the thing. Follow-up PCR assay revealed a high viral load of 10 to the 8th. That's 100 million copies per milliliter. 100 million copies of this virus in his sputum during the following days, with the last available result on January 29th. So this is a person who had a fairly mild case of it. That's always good to hear. Got better, went back to work, and 2 days after that, they're testing this guy, and they're finding still a viral load of 10 to the 8th copies per milliliter. So that's concerning. We don't know, though, if these virus particles are infective or not. They would have to take those out and culture them and see if they could actually infect. But this is now, we have a story developing where this thing is certainly infective during the incubation period, and that's in the pre-symptomatic phase. So an asymptomatic ability to infect other people. Obviously, it's infective during the symptomatic phase, but now post-symptomatic, oh my gosh, this is going to hugely complicate anything that you might want to do in terms of quarantining if this turns out to be true. But again, 1 patient, and we don't know if this is universal, and as well, we don't know if those virus particles are actually capable of infecting. But I just thought I'd bring this to your attention. It's pretty interesting. I like how this article concludes, though, because with all of that, despite these concerns, all 4 patients who were seen in Munich had mild cases. They were hospitalized primarily for public health purposes, so that it was the flu, maybe not even that bad for these people. And, they say since hospital capacities are limited, in particular, given the concurrent peak of the actual influenza season that's right upon us now, research is needed to determine whether such patients can be treated with appropriate guidance and oversight at home or outside the hospital. So that's really encouraging to me. In fact, it's something that we've been noticing, and I don't have any explanations for it. I'm reading like crazy to try and figure this out, as I'm sure everybody else is. Why are so few cases being noted outside of China when China looks like it's getting just absolutely clobbered by this? So that remains to be seen and unraveled a little bit. But Germany is not yet out of the woods because we just had 2 more infected. So they brought 100 returnees from China, brought them back as an airlift. And they found 2 that had been infected. The 2 sufferers are now being treated in the hospital. Anyway, that's been going on. So, they brought these buses of Germans back. So everybody else who was on that bus, of course, is going to be very worried right now. So the conclusions for today. First, media is working really hard to try and convince, themselves, that the flu is as bad or worse than coronavirus. I think that's absolutely irresponsible. I think that it's doing a disservice, and it would be not hard for them to discover the ways that flu is not the same as this coronavirus, and that we should maybe treat them differently. China's official statistics, they aren't really worth reporting anymore. I started with them, and I'm going to keep reporting them. But looking at the videos that came out, looking at the crematorium data, looking at all kinds of things, looking at the Chinese government's reactions, I can tell you for sure that the reported numbers are just ridiculously low at this point in time. Okay, continuing, not only Asymptomatic transfer is proven, but now viral loads have been detected in a post-symptomatic patient. We have to watch that and see what to make of that. But again, that's going to really, really complicate the quarantine process, because now it might be, imagine the impact if a lot of people get this and they say, God, now you have to spend 3 weeks, 4 weeks in isolation, self-isolation before you can come out into public. That'll really complicate things a bunch. As well, loads of new cases still emerging. I couldn't go through them all for time today, mainly from people with recent travel to China or with direct contact with someone from there. So we're still not seeing, for some reason, a lot of human-to-human transfer outside of China. Again, a great mystery. We're going to have to look at that. The data outside China, inside China, just not lining up. But we'll be watching this as we go forward. That's the update for today. Thank you so much for listening.